Hello fellow Star Wars fans, this is Starrapter here and I'm giving you another episode of This Week in Star Wars Canon. Now every week I bring guys all the latest in the Star Wars continuity, ranging from the TV series, to the comics, to the novels, and to the video games. This week we had another great episode of Rebels, but just a reminder I will be talking spoilers, so make sure you go watch that episode before you watch this video. Alright, ready? This was a great Zeb-centric episode. We've seen the rebels all back together in a group, and they got a tip that there was refugees on this installation. So when they go there, they find out that these actually are the Lasat, the same species as Zeb. Remember back in episode 2 of season 1, we thought that Zeb was the only survivor of his species. They thought that the whole planet that they were based on got destroyed by Callus, if you remember. So they find these Lasat people, and they are on a mission to bring them back to their home, which is this very mystical kind of place. Also, thrown in the mix here was Hondo. Now Hondo, it was great to see him make a return. We had him a couple episodes back. It's nice to see he wasn't only in one episode. I hope to see him again. He's just as funny as he ever was in the Clone Wars. I really love the character. Especially how he's always playing both sides. You know, we see that in the beginning he's helping the rebels, and by the end he, you know, put a transcript beacon on their transmitter. So that was, you know, that was a very Hondo thing for him to do, and he's always covering his own butt. So it's very, very fun to see that. But yeah, it's very, very cool how they actually had the mystical powers of these Lasat people. They're, you know, there's this little sage lady, but then there's also a bigger male version of, you know, Zeb. So they, you know, in conjunction to the Force, there's hasn't really been explored like what other, I guess you could think of the Night Sisters and all that as like another form of the Force. And Canon pretty much said, yeah, you know, it's not just a Jedi and a Sith that can channel the Force, there's other beings. So they were in the ship and they were doing this sort of spell, and it was really cool to see that Zeb came out with that his weapon, his bow rifle, ended up turning into this big staff with a couple lever pulls and stuff. He changed his entire weapon around because, as we know, he is an honor guard, or he was an honor guard, and that was the thing I really liked was him talking to Ezra about his past, because when they get these new Lasat people on their ship, Zeb really doesn't want anything to do with them, and Ezra asks, like, what's going on? Like, these are your long lost people, why aren't you with them? Because he feels responsible, since we find out he was actually the captain of the honor guard to the royal family, so he was in charge of the military, and he let his people down. So the whole time that they're on the ship, he is feeling down. He's not his normal, you know, humorous self. He's pretty serious in this episode. So I thought that was really cool how Ezra had that pep talk and talked them back into, you know, helping the last of the survivors, you know. So that was pretty sweet. And the last thing in the episode was the whole Maelstrom sequence. That was really well done. The whole visual of, I think they described it as like an imploding star system. So it looked like multiple like nebulas put together, and anything that would get near them would rip them apart, but they had to get through, the rebels had to get through that nebula in order to get to the home world, which we find out is of the Lasat. So they have Callus who's tailing them, and basically what happens is they actually use the spells of the Lasat. They use the staff of Zeb to kind of, I don't know, put some sort of barrier around their ship to allow them to get through that maelstrom, otherwise they would be destroyed, which we see happens to the Empire because Callus doesn't care. He wants to get these rebels. He's been after them for a while. He says, send out some ties, some fighters to get these guys. I'm not going to lose them again. And it was a really cool visual seeing the TIE fighter. It was kind of just get ripped apart. And then later on, Callus is even putting his frigate in there as well, and you just see the sheeting of metal just ripping off, and they eventually have to turn away. And I thought the music during that sequence was really cool. It was not something I've really heard in Star Wars. It had these like violins, very, very nice composed music going along with it. But they did actually find out that there is an entire planet of the Lasat, which I thought was always kind of strange, like how could an entire species be wiped out? So we do find out that they have an entire inhabited planet. So we now know that Zeb has a place to call home, you know, once the Empire's ended. Maybe he goes back to his people later on. We'll have to watch more to find out, but I really like this episode. I feel like they added so much more backstory to Zeb with revealing he was a captain to the Honor Guard. Last week we had a Sabine episode, which told us a bit about her. So Rebels is doing a great job, like the creators are saying this season, really honing in on each specific character and telling us a bit more about their backstory. But that wasn't all we had this week in Star Wars canon. We also had Obi Wan and Anakin, issue number 2. So this came out last month, the debut issue, and what happened in there is this takes place like 2 years after the Phantom Menace, I think, and because he's 12, Anakin's 12, and basically what happens is Obi-Wan and Anakin are called to this planet, this Carnelian 4 planet, and there's a distress beacon, so they go there. And you know, this is kind of a peacetime because since Phantom Menace, the Trade Federation has been dissolved, and there's really, I guess, no big military power. Also, this is what a Jedi is basically doing now, is a protector of peace. They are guardians, you know. You know, the Clone Wars, they are seen more as the military, but this is generally, this comic miniseries is giving us a great representation of the ideals and the morality behind the Jedi and what, you know, they originally supposed to do, keep peace. So, in the last issue, issue 1, we find out right at the end that Obi-Wan and Anakin are being held at gunpoint by these 2 women. So, picking right up in that spot, we have Obi-Wan and Anakin held at gunpoint, and they say, you know, we are Jedi. And the cool thing is, these people don't know what a Jedi is. And you got to think about it. You know, there was about 10,000 Jedi, you know, at the start of the Clone Wars. So compared to, what is it? It must be like trillions of people in the galaxy. You're probably going to come across quite a few people that have never seen a Jedi, let alone ever hear of one. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense, and I think that's pretty cool how they gave us this representation, because the planet itself is basically Carnelian 4. It's a snow world, and there's a civilization that looks like it got destroyed and deserted, and the civilization was really modern. But they also have these airships that kind of fly around. It's really cool. I love what they did with the artwork on this. It was the same guy that did Shattered Empire, Chiquetto, I think his name is. And he does this great paintings for the backgrounds of the snow, everything else. But that's really, really cool. So basically what's going on is they get held up at gunpoint, and then an airship comes in, and then they get attacked by this other group. So there's 2 factions on this planet. They are called the Closed and the Open. So the 2 females are of the Open faction, and then there's this other character that Anakin saves, and his name, I can't remember right now, but he is part of the Closed faction. So you could think of, there's these 2 warring factions there. And basically what happens is Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of resolve the conflict to an extent, and now they are actually on their way to a safer place because all their transports have been destroyed in the little battle that they just took place in. So that's kind of where the story is now. I'm happy that we have more of a plot. This is more of a story about Anakin and Obi-Wan escorting these people that have their differences and kind of mediating them. But there's also backstory flashbacks, which is really cool. In every issue, it seems like they're going to have a backstory of like a couple months prior to this event on this planet of Anakin and Obi-Wan training at the Jedi Temple. And in this issue, we actually had the Palpatine taking special interest in Anakin and actually showing him the underworld of Coruscant. And it's really, really, really interesting how Palpatine you know, he describes as like a politician, he has to know everything about his planet. And since we know everything about his future and how he becomes emperor, it's really interesting how he was really integrated into just about everything as far as politics and all, even in that lower level. But things I really liked about this issue was, of course, Obi Wan in that conflict with the airship at the beginning. He basically throws his lightsaber and just takes out this airship with, like, it looks like it was nothing to him. Like, he just threw his lightsaber, boom, that whole thing goes down. I like the whole Western style this has. It's got, you know, people do like the in the beginning of the issue, they were being held at gunpoint, but they had dual wielding blasters. The two women that were the open faction, and then there's like a standoff between the one woman and the guy who's in the closed faction. So it reminded me of that. But yeah, and there's another part with Anakin where he is actually trying to use like the Force to calm these creatures that are dangerous, but Obi-Wan says, you know, if it wasn't for us, we wouldn't have to kill them, so, you know, just try to save them, you know, let's try not to make this violent. So he's trying to calm these things, and it just doesn't work. So we just see Anakin just, you know, decapitate one of them. And it just shows you that Anakin, even at such a young age of 12, he is still conflicted and full of, you know, uncontrollable rage. And that's going to continue, obviously, on through the rest of his life. But yeah, I really like this story. I'm happy the plot is finally formed. I really dig this, the undertones of everything with the Jedi before, you know, the Clone Wars. And this is a good representation of what they actually have been doing. So if you guys haven't checked this out, I highly recommend it. If you guys like the video, please hit that thumbs up symbol over there. And please subscribe if you want to find out everything I do here on my channel. You'll see I have a review of Star Wars Aftermath, which came out a couple months ago, so check that out. And you can follow me on Twitter at Starrapter, as well as like my page on Facebook at Starrapter. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.